So good evening and welcome. I'm Keith Gillis. I'm Dean of the College of Natural Resources and a forester when I'm doing things that are actually more productive than being a dean. And I'm pleased to welcome you here this evening for ERG's lecture. We're very, very pleased in the College of Natural Resources that ERG is affiliated with the College of Natural Resources starting this year. It's been a good year, been some bumps in the road, but I think we're going to do our best and be successful in helping ERG go on for its next 40 years. In much the way that it has been operating, providing cutting-edge programs in renewable energy and energy technology, and being one of the best energy conservation master's degrees program in the country. Both the college and the Energy and Resources Group are obviously dedicated to providing the knowledge base that our society needs to address environmental and sustainability issues that are so critical that we're facing in the world today, and for training the next generation of environmental energy stewards of the planet. Before I move on to introducing our speaker, in a program that's been around this long, there are sad moments as well, and Nerd Birdsall, who was the founder of ERG, will have a memorial service for Birdsall this Sunday at 1 p.m. in the faculty club. And in the meantime, the work of ERG goes on, and we can view this lecture as a celebration of a life well lived. So our speaker this evening is Joan Blades, whose expertise is quite relevant to the mission of the Energy and Resources Group and to the College of Natural Resources. All successful leaders know that change has to be rooted in the community, and Joan has been highly effective in mobilizing grassroots efforts to make change happen. Receiving her BA in history from Berkeley in 1977, Joan went on to earn her JD from Golden Gate University School of Law. After practicing law as a member of the Alaska Bar Association and the State Bar of California, and teaching mediation at Golden Gate University. In fact, I just got some valuable advice on mediation on a situation that I'm dealing with at the moment at Golden Gate University. Joan and her husband, Wes Boyd, co-founded Berkeley Systems in 1987. You may be familiar with some of the software marketed by Berkeley Systems, the After Dark screensaver, the flying toasters, I had it, and the You Don't Know Jack computer games that cleverly combine trivia with comedy. In 1998, Joan and Wes started an email group to pass around a petition asking Congress to censure President Clinton and move on, rather than attempting to impeach him, and MoveOn.org was born. It evolved into the family of organizations known simply as MoveOn, which gives Americans a voice in the political process. Among the MoveOn campaigns that you may remember were the campaign calling for arms inspections rather than an invasion of Iraq, reinstatement of lower limits on arsenic and mercury pollution, and campaign finance reform. With 5 million members, the group's raised millions of dollars for candidates it identifies as moderates and progressives, including President Obama. In 2006, Joe co-founded the organization MomsRising, a grassroots organization that brings people together concerned about the need to build a more family-friendly America. The group encourages everyone to join the conversation about transforming our work culture. Joan wrote Mediate Your Own Divorce and is co-author of the Motherhood Manifesto and Custom Fit Workplace, a practical guide that describes family-friendly workplace practices. Tonight, Joan's going to be talking to us about political mobilization needed to confront the world's biggest challenges. I'm sure you're all looking forward to hearing her remarks. I'm going to have to fire out and watch this on video later because I have a situation at the Gill track that requires my attention. But please join me in welcoming Joan Blades to the podium. Joan.
Thank you. Well, it's an honor to be here, and thank you for a very, very nice introduction. It really is wonderful to be invited to speak here. Now, here's the little button that I'm told is going to make all the slides change as time goes on. First of all, probably I should explain what I think a punctuated equilibrium of social progress is. I figure you guys are science types. You've heard the punctuated equilibrium in, when you're talking about the environment and things changing, not flatline, things jump. Well, that's the same in the case of social progress. And maybe the best example I can give you is Adam Hochschild wrote a book about Bury the Chains, how slavery in the late 1700s in England was kind of an accepted part of the social structure, had been for hundreds of years, if not thousands, right? But then over the course of 50 years, slavery became an accepted ill, an evil that practically everybody agreed upon. And I think everybody has their own example of what that change might be. But for me, that's what I'm trying to say when a punctuated equilibrium of social progress. So, and of course, since I'm giving this talk, you heard the introduction, I'm going to be talking about it through the experiences I've had. So it's going to have a specific focus, starting with MoveOn. How many here are familiar with MoveOn? Members of MoveOn? Okay, well, I may tell you one or two things you don't know in the course of talking to you. How many here are familiar with MomsRising? Okay, we got some here. That's very good. By the time you're done, you'll all be familiar with MomsRising, and hopefully we'll have a few more members. And Custom Fit Workplace. Okay, we got a few of those too. I'm not even going to ask about the living room conversations. They're just a little baby, and I got to tell you about them. I can't wait to show you the newest in the family. But I'm going to start with the MoveOn story, because a lot of people really don't know that MoveOn started midway in the impeachment scandal. And it was at Monica Lewinsky Clinton impeachment scandal 6 months into it. Wes and I are sitting around going, this is insane. And as it was noted, I am a mediator by training, and the polarization, the opportunity cost, we wrote a one-sentence petition. Congress must immediately censure the president and move on to pressing issues facing the nation. It was a common sense appeal. And we sent it to under 100 of our friends and family. And we had 100,000 people sign it within a week, which was just extraordinary in '98. We really had no plan to do anything like this. That's what I'm trying to, you've heard of the concept of the accidental activist. You're looking at one. This is it, But it was like we had a tiger by the tail, and pretty soon we had 300,000, and we had 500,000. And that was my first experience of a viral moment. And so with MoveOn, I'm going to talk to you about a few viral moments. In the last 14 years, it's 14 years now, we've had 3 viral moments. Now, that was the first viral moment. This is a picture of the first 4 days. That's kind of what a really viral moment looks like. And then I'm going to take you on to 2000. This is the first time I ended up giving a talk was after we had participated in the election in 2000. Because when we gathered 500,000 people together to say, let's do something common sense, censure the president and move on to pressing issues facing the nation, we had Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Green Party. You could love Clinton or hate him and still think, let's do the reasonable thing. And when the election came in '98, it was clear that it was unpopular impeaching the president. So when 2 weeks later the House voted to impeach, we felt uncomfortable walking away from what we thought was a flash campaign. Because in a democracy, when your elected officials do not do what you are expecting them to, pay attention to what you're saying your priorities are, your job is then to elect people that do better represent you. And so we did the We Will Remember campaign, and we raised $2.3 million in small contributions online. Now, you may not be impressed by that today, But in 2000, that was amazing. That was a proof point that we could actually elect someone and have them not be dependent upon major donors. Regular folks could give the kind of support that was necessary. So that was a big deal. Now, the next big thing to come up was mentioned was the lead up to the war with Iraq. That was our next viral period. And this is a picture of the very first advertisement that we did, Let the Inspections Work. We grew to well over 1 million members during this period. We had the Win Without War Coalition. There were all sorts of great organizations, a huge number of organizations involved. And we even had a vigil prior to the war that went around the world. And these are just a few of the pictures. And this was the largest anti-war movement in the history of the world. And I think this statement by Patrick Tyler really says it. The fracturing of the Western alliance over Iraq and the huge anti-war demonstrations around the world this weekend are reminders that there may still be two superpowers on the planet, the United States and world opinion. That, you know, it still breaks my heart that we did not succeed in not going to war. But consider what's happened since that time. Consider the Arab Spring, the Tea Party, Occupy. You know, things are happening in a different way. Things have changed in the way we raise money online and in the way we can connect, both on the ground and through the computers and our cell phones. So I had started to get a feeling that viral moments only happened when bad things were in the works. So I have to share that the last viral moment we had was the Obama campaign in 2008. We grew to over 3 million, we grew to over 5 million members at that time. Between the war and the run-up to that campaign, we'd gotten to 3 million members, but the Obama campaign, we grew to over 5 million members, which was really incredible. And I like knowing that there are good reasons you can have viral moments too, politically. So, what have I learned in those first years? This is one of my favorite pictures, the strong vision, big ears. Note the ears are even bigger than the eyes in this picture. MoveOn is not about what the team sending the emails are thinking we should send out. We're about listening to our members and then looking for the best possible way to empower them to be effective in the political discourse. And that's when we succeed. And this lovely thing, you may not recognize it. It is a very nicely decorated coffin. It represents joyful funerals, which is the other part of having big ears, is when things aren't working. It's time for us to let them go and really focus on what is resonating for people. So this is a slide I'll have a couple of times because in terms of this time when you have a punctuated equilibrium, disruptive technologies have been the opportunity point. The internet allowed us to have these jumps in connectivity. People used to say, are online petitions meaningful? And it's like, yes, they are. It's not just the petition and delivering it. It's all the people that show up. It's the, empowering people that haven't been engaged in politics ever before to be able to join together with others. It's this online-offline relationship. It's like saying, is the phone meaningful? The internet is the telephone on steroids, and now we have smartphones, and the internet may become passé, but it's what's happening right now. And the iPod changed the way we listen to music. And these computers we can take anywhere, changing the way we work. So our lives are disruptive technologies create new opportunities to enable participation and changing what we do. So the basic MoveOn pieces that I'm trying to talk about here are We had 3 viral moments. It's enabled massive citizen engagement. And I'm talking about the MoveOn massive citizen engagement, but you're going to think of other engagements that are also been changing the world. The ability to raise big dollars from average citizens is huge. In 2008, we raised over $80 million in small contributions for Obama. That's stunning. That's now become part of the whole system of being a candidate. And a good candidate is using the internet the way a good organizer does. They're listening to their constituents. I'm not sure enough of them are listening as much as I'd like, but it's an opportunity for the best. And then there are now thousands of online, offline organizations that are empowering citizens. And that's another really good thing. MoveOn is one of thousands of organizations working on all sorts of different issues. And then finally, I'm really excited about this. We're actually 7 million members now because we have a new technology capacity that we're offering all MoveOn members. It's called Sign On. We have MoveOn members all around the country making their own petitions and sharing them with people. And when things are moving well, then we will pile on and help them do even better. So it's really a whole change in the way that we participate with the political dialogue. Now I'm going to take us back to the thousands of online, offline organizations. Someone mentioned MomsRising, and I co-founded that with Kristen 6 years ago. And what led up to that was she sent me a book, The F Word, Feminism in Jeopardy, and I got to this one data point. And it's that, it's not that there's just indiscriminate bias against women. It's really quite particular. There's huge bias against mothers. And it turns out that if you are a mother, you're going to make about 73 cents to an equally qualified man's dollar. And if you are a single mother, you're going to make about 60 cents to an equally qualified man's dollar. Well, why might there be so many women and children in poverty in this country? Or the other side of that, why are there so few women in leadership? We have 12 women CEOs in the Fortune 500. Of the last 6 Supreme Court justice nominees, 3 men, 3 women, all the men had kids, and none of the women did. It's not an accident. There's something going on here. And since 80% of American women become mothers by the time they're 40-something, this is actually a significant problem. And I think it's one not many people are aware of. How many in this crowd are mothers? All right, got it, quite a few. How many have or had mothers? Yeah. Yes, okay. Now, it's a pretty good sized constituency we've got here. And I don't think it's because people hate their mothers. So we think there's maybe a systematic problem. And so with Kristen, I wrote a book called The Motherhood Manifesto. And I was kind of naive. I honestly didn't think I was going to start an organization, but I was going to share it with someone and they'd want to do. But yeah, we started MomsRising. So it's been an amazing 6 years working with a great team, working on family economic security. And so we've got to use the story here. It's a systems approach. What do we need? We need maternity leave. We need outstanding flexible work. We need toxic-free childhood, health care for all, early care and education, realistic and fair wages, and sick days paid for all. Yes, we've used the term mothers. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but just to give you a sense of how out of step with the world we are, out of over 170-something countries in the world, there are 3 countries that have no paid leave for new mothers. That's Papua New Guinea, Swaziland, and the United States of America. You're laughing. You know, it would be funny, except we literally have women in this country going, should I take care of my new baby, or shall I feed my family this week? And that's just not an acceptable question to ask. I mean, when I was a kid, all my friends, parents, and my parents, we had moms at home. And most kids don't have that anymore. So, you know, it was this wonderful thing for me to find out that I didn't need to be, you know, somewhere when I was pretty young, the women's movement happened, and I thought it was really awesome because I didn't have to be a secretary, nurse, or teacher, which didn't seem really exciting. So it's a good thing, but we're missing a piece of that story. So with Moms Rising, we're working on back burner issues, whereas MoveOn tends to work on the front page issues that everybody is the most passionate about. We're looking at a system and some really deep work here. So the way we're doing it is we're sharing our stories, we're showing up, though there's a huge bias against mothers in the workplace and hiring, wages, and advancement, there's actually a bias for us with the media and with elected officials. When we show up with those cute babies, they let us in, even when they don't let some of the other guys in at all. It's a good thing. And we even dress up in silly outfits because, you know, the humor of sandwich mom can sometimes get through when other forms of communication work less well for whatever reason. Well, actually, I'll get into the whys of that later on. And we show up with celebrities, or we hang out with top elected, yes, and wearing funny T-shirts with Supermom M's on them. So what have we been able to do in 6 years? We've helped in defining the conversation. You know, maternal profiling has been recognized in the New York Times as a term of art, employment discrimination against a woman who has or will have children. And we helped pass the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, the Affordable Care Act, Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act, multiple extensions of unemployment insurance, and one paid family leave in New Jersey and Washington. That's right. California had it already. New Jersey and Washington, we only have 47 more states to go. Yeah, okay. What can I say? Maybe we could do something federally sometime. Just a thought. So what were the major learnings? You know, what was it about Moms Rising? Well, it was clear at a certain point that very few people were aware of how out of touch we are with the reality of the bias against women, in specific mothers, in the workforce. And that there's more of the women's movement that's needed to get going. We collaborate with well over 100 policy partners, and together we're very powerful. We work on toxics, we work on clean air, we work on, the whole list of issues in the mother's agenda. And, maternal profiling may not seem like a big deal, but when sexual harassment was finally brought into the lexicon, it actually gave us a way to act in the workplace to end sexual harassment. It's got value. But even so, working in the world of politics, here's my donkey elephant, it's been kind of toxic. The Moms Rising piece, we find a lot of common ground, but even so, in DC, it's really not working very well, to be perfectly honest, and it's not as though the state legislatures are doing dramatically better from what I see. The partisanship has just gotten a little out of hand. And so I saw within the Moms Rising system an opportunity that I was really taken with. And that's the custom-fit workplace. It's actually, this book, the mention was made that this is about family-friendly work. We don't say that on the front cover. You say family-friendly, you get a bunch of women in the room. We don't want to be in the pink ghetto. This is a business book, thank you. No pink on there. This is all about making businesses more profitable. And notice, this is a Moms Rising project, but it's not strongly branded Moms Rising because, frankly, we need to have the men in the room to make the kind of changes we need. What's really encouraging is all the things that are good for mothers, they're good for everyone. You know, flexible work, virtual work, telework. I've been doing this for over 14 years now. I work from home, and I've been told I'm rather effective, you know? I'm here, gee. Modern career tracks. This university actually has been a leader in that realm. When you intelligently step back and you look at some of these linear career tracks, they notice that, you've got a greater percentage of women graduating with PhDs, but there are far few women on the tenure track. What might be happening? Well, it turns out, yes, women do have babies, and that is sometimes a nonlinear experience. And it's actually quite easy to enable an 8-year or a 9-year tenure track and do other things that are compatible with people having lives outside of work as well as at work, and it's equitable. I mean, sometimes men have responsibilities outside of work too, and we don't want to lose them because they are, you know, doing what I would want them to do as human beings. It's a good thing. Contract work is more and more common. Babies at work, I could tell you about that, but that's not the main part of this discussion. And high commitment work practices, which is my very favorite part of this, which basically takes it all together. Essentially what we're saying is every job can be better suited to the modern workforce, and you've got a menu of opportunities, but it's got to make the job more effective as well as be good for the workers. And when you move from an old-fashioned command and control authoritarian work structure to a respect-based, empowered, trust-based work structure, you get better work, you get higher profitability, you have lower turnover. There's a lot of great advantages to it. So this is a business argument. And I can hang out with Republicans talking about this very happily. It's a good time. So once again, we got the disruptive technology piece. And within those work practices, I realized there is a disruptive technology. And that's the folks sitting at those computers there. And it's the way I've been working for the last 14 years. It turns out that work changes very slowly. Most workplaces are resistant to change. But it's changing even though management, by and large, doesn't change unless there's a crisis in the case of telework. So you've got tradition, distrust, fear of change on one side of this tipping point, and actually, to be honest, it's still tipped more on the traditional side by a long shot. But I'm an optimistic person, so it's tipping this way. That's where we're visualizing. And so you've got increased work productivity, increased worker happiness and productivity. It's good for national security. It reduces traffic problems. It reduces smog and carbon dioxide. It reduces, the traffic congestion, the trade deficit. I was misreading here. Okay, anyway, the benefits really outweigh the deficits, one would think. At least I'm hoping so. So I'm working on it. And I'm working on it with some really smart people. This particular information is from the Telework Research Network. They have made an estimate that businesses would annually save $242 billion. Employees would save $2,000 to $9,000 per year, and communities would save $19 billion if the 40% of people that could telework and wanted to did so half-time. So this is not saying everyone teleworks entirely. This is just giving people the ability to half-time telework if they wanted to. And then there are the green savings. 235 million barrels of oil, 43 million tons of greenhouse gases. That's pretty cool. And it's not political. There should be no problem with that. This is a different kind of challenge. This is helping business practices change. Okay, next guy. So in telework, you have businesses that have advantages from using telework. The government would have advantages from using telework. Atlanta has encouraged telework because they had congestion problems that were terrible and smog problems that were terrible. Yeah, that it really helps with the infrastructure. Also, most governments have backup plans that include telework, because if weather or terrorist attack were to happen, having telework practices in place really makes you more robust. That's also true for businesses. Workers like it. It's great for a lot of workers. I should go back to the government for a minute. The other advantage is onshoring is happening in part because of telework. Many people don't know it, but JetBlue has its service reps in their homes in Utah. Their 1-800 contacts, more and more, they're finding that it's actually very efficient and effective to have people working from their homes rather than call centers, which are by and large not that delightful of places to work. Academics, we need you. In particular, we need business schools teaching all these management practices. I'm looking for the day when every business school is teaching, modern workplace practices that really meet the needs of the modern workforce. Because it's really a different shaped workforce than the one that most business practices are still designed for. Business consultants, we have a lot of great consultants out there that are helping businesses change the way they do the work. And they would love to be able to get on this wagon and keep it moving forward. And environmentalists. At this point, the way I'm seeing this, we came out with the book, and you always hope when you come out with a book, everyone will say, yes, of course, that's exactly what I was thinking, and everything changes. Didn't happen. But as I've walked around this, it's become really apparent to me that there's a lot of opportunities, and in fact, what we need is CEOs, champions in each of the areas, CEOs, government leaders, academics, business consultants, taking leadership roles in each area. And I volunteer to help with the environmentalists, because I have talked to some environmentalists, and this really resonates for them. Wonder if that's why I'm here. Okay, so far we have 27 states supporting telecommuting. And in terms of thinking about this and, why is this on the list? Because I think we're at the leading edge of a potential culture shift. With MoveOn, a bunch of things have changed. With MomsRising, we've, joined a women's movement, and we're working on a next wave. And I do think of this a lot in terms of water imagery. We're going with the flow. That's part of the big ears and the strong vision. And you're paddling in pretty fast moving water, trying to get the course a little more favorable, or a lot more favorable. Telework, I'm hoping, is a foot in the door. Once you start one kind of change, it can start snowballing. I've seen that in some other places. And I think if we can strategically engage champions from all these different sectors, the game board is set up and everybody's facing the same direction, but there's not a lot of movement and not as strategic as one might hope. But the truth is, my biggest concern is actually, you've seen MoveOn, MomsRising, is climate change. And because, as a mother, I think, I want a good future for my kids. And even if some of the people here say climate change is happening and it's going to be terrible, but even if there was only a 10% chance of that, that's not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. Everything else becomes less important. So I've been wanting to do an experiment for a long time because something dramatic has to change. And last year, I did a pilot project. Yes, I see that. They're making goo-goo eyes at each other. Yes. We had living room conversations. Only 10 of them. It was a pilot project where a conservative and progressive co-host each invited 2 of their friends to have a conversation about energy/climate. And I'm really thrilled to say they were all successful. So we put up a website with all the directions of how to do it, because it's an open source project, and it's pretty much unresourced. It is a baby. I have a conservative partner. And what we found out from the pilot project was it's not just Berkeley. Our communities have self-segregated. So one of the hardest things was getting that initial pairing of friends. But we started seeing a number of ways to do that. And most people have deep anxiety about speaking to people with different views. It's become impolite to speak about politics across partisan lines, which is, it's a sad reality that we are living with. And we were unable to create a fact sheet that felt nonpartisan to participants. The mere term climate change is now partisan. Now, I have been, attempting to have conversations across partisan lines for many years, and I actually had a really good conversation with Roberta and Michelle Combs, who are, the president of the Christian Coalition and the chief communications person. And when I talked to them back in 2004, 2005, we were able to talk about climate change, and actually Michelle took Al Gore's training, which was pretty cool. We couldn't have that conversation today. And that bothers me. So let's talk about the successes. Every conversation was a success in that nothing blew up. You always worry about that. And a majority of people wanted to have a second conversation, which is about as good as you could ask for in some ways. People found common ground. You don't have to agree that climate change is happening to agree upon efficiency, to agree upon needing more renewable energy. And people felt they were heard and learned something from other people's viewpoints. And just so you're not just taking this from me, I've got a quote from one of our conservatives, which just made me feel good. This evening exceeded my expectations. I was skeptical when you asked me to co-host. I expected more strident views from the other side and thought that they would expect the same from my side. This was a great dialogue, and I have genuine interest in continuing. And I have huge interest in continuing this experiment. So, what is this experiment besides having a really intimate conversation between 6 people? It's a structured conversation with some really simple guidelines. The first ground rule is be curious and open to learning. Yes, we have to have cute pictures too. I'm glad you like that. And the next one is balance advocacy and inquiry, show respect and suspend judgment, seek alignment rather than agreement. If with the pipeline, the tar sands pipeline, there were a lot of people there. They didn't agree about everything, but they found alignment and opposing the pipeline. Some people were there, they didn't like the concern about water, others it was concerns about the CO2, but they found a place to get together on this. Be authentic and welcome it from others. Be purposeful and to the point. Own and guide the conversation. We all had ownership of those conversations. I mean, it's simple common sense. And it works. My dream for this is that we can have hundreds of conversations this year. And we can, there are the guidelines, and then there's the structured conversation that starts with 3 questions basically about who you are. What's your dream for the future, for your community? And people find, that we have a lot of common ground. You don't think, oh, they're stupid after all. They do drink lattes. It's not like that. You find that these people, we have a lot of common with them, and you come away liking them. So we have conversations that are in the mix: energy, money and politics, immigration, food and obesity, health, parents and the media, voting practices. We're talking to the faith community. Tea Party, Occupy get-togethers with follow-up conversations about whatever they want to. Budget, perhaps, taxes. These are conversations that we can have in the right situation. We can make them safe, and we can do more than that. I've got a good bit of data that citizens are sick of the status quo. I don't think I even have to convince anybody. Politics are not working very well, but not only that, our communities are not working well in a lot of ways, and we actually have to achieve things. We need to empower citizens to lead. That's why these are tiny, intimate conversations. I've learned from MoveOn and MomsRising that it's really scary to give over control and say, yeah, go have a constituent meeting, but don't do anything stupid. But, by and large, people don't. You gotta be willing to let go. And so this is open source. We're hoping people will have these conversations and they will bring back what they learned to us. And one benefit is we start to reweave the fabric of our communities, create relationships across partisan lines. The other thing is when we find these 80%, 100% solutions, when you think of it, Wikipedia, YouTube, open source, these are places where people have brought a lot of their shared wisdom. And if we can start having hundreds of conversations where people are saying, yeah, I want to pass the DREAM Act, maybe we can give support to leaders so that they really can lead. FDR said, you've convinced me, now make me do it. That's what we need to do. Good leaders really want us behind them. And so we've tried to make it really simple. And we're going to have to trust people to take these conversations and to tell us what to do with. So this is another strong vision and big ears kind of moment in conversation. So this is getting to the last part of the talk. Those are my 4 babies, oldest to youngest. What is a crisitunity, you may ask? Or you probably have a good idea what it is. Those are the places where very often these leaps happen. Sometimes they don't, or maybe too often they don't. But I'm trying to identify crisitunities in my life or in my world and see if there's something we could do. So consider the value of having a telework policy and capacity ready for the next snowmageddon. Now that worked out funky. Hurricane or earthquake. It looked better on my machine, I'll tell you that. But the fact is, when they had Snowmageddon a few years ago, they did actually, the federal government did create telework policies for the federal government. And the last time they had crazy snow in Washington, D.C., they didn't shut down. I wish they'd bragged a lot more about it. They didn't, but they should. The next oil shortage, the next bird flu, or Some of you might recall a deep ocean spill that we were unable to plug. That was a crisis-opportunity. What in the heck happened? Why didn't, that was epic. Just saying, something was needed to happen there. So this is a graph about the concern about climate change. You can see it was actually at its height in 2007 and has gone down despite the fact that it seems like we continue to have all sorts of reinforcing information. Now, I've heard it's going up some, but I don't know that. This is pretty recent. So I think this is a really important thing to keep in mind. Research shows that many of our assumptions about how to reach people different from us are flat wrong. We can't count on facts to change minds. Emotions and values trump facts almost every time. It really seems that way to me. And that's another reason I'm so excited to start reweaving our communities. So this is a graphic made to express the Citizens United issue. In 2008, Obama raised $750 million, which is just fabulous. At that same year, Warren Buffett had over $10 billion in profits. And in that same year, ExxonMobil had over $45 billion in profits. Now, if it is true that Citizens United means that Warren and Exxon can now contribute to getting people elected however they want into super PACs, I think we have a really big problem. Because $80 million in small contributions from MoveOn starts to seem insufficient. I'm hoping that this crisis-opportunity can play out to bringing things back into line with a democracy where citizens have more power than corporations. It's a possibility. This is a picture from 2010, MoveOn outreach about other 98% campaign that we had going on that summer to, there's the 2% that the tax breaks were for and the other 98%. It's just to say, I've talked a lot about the successes. I want to talk a little bit about, this might not have been a success. Or then again, maybe it was. I don't know. It's the 99% completely unrelated? Quite possible. But timing can be everything. It can be timing, it can be whatever it is. It requires a lot of persistence. And it's one of those Goldilocks things. It's got to be the right time, the right place, the right people, the right whatever. So you just keep on trying, even if that wasn't the one. And to just reinforce this even more deeply, we have the sand mandala, something that is a huge investment of time and effort to create something beautiful. And then it just goes away. And I've been learning about this for the last decade or so. In 2004, people worked so hard to not have Bush have a second term in his presidency. And when all was said and done, it did not happen. But it was essential that we did that work. It's an act, I've come to see it as heroic, the way people invest themselves in the issues and the candidates they care about. We don't know that we're going to win or lose, but we have to do it. And we do it because we care about, our kids, the birds in the spring, whatever it is, we care about them, and it's for that community and relationship that we have with each other at the same time. So it's okay that sometimes we make very beautiful sand mandalas, and this is what happens. In every election, half of the people feel like everything they did kind of came to naught. So, this is my Google reweaving slide. Disruptive technology has also enabled us to have our communities not only separate themselves, but we listen to completely different media. The stories that we hear about the world we live in overlap less and less. If I pull up Iraq on Google and my conservative partner at Living Room Conversation pulls up Google's Iraq, we are going to get a completely different set of stories. And we don't even know it. Most of us know if we're watching Fox or NPR, there might be a different approach. But it's so deep and pervasive that to have a functioning democracy and not even have shared reality is deadly. I mean, I'm truly worried about it. So the concept of reweaving the fabric of our democracy is core to me. And that's, kind of what I've been trying to talk about, talking about MoveOn, MomsRising, Custom Fit Workplace. It's trying to engage people in the public dialogue and to bring people together to find the common ground. And so the theories, kind of overall theories of change, are filling vacuums of leadership. I mean, for MoveOn, with those viral moments, the first two, Center and MoveOn, that was something I could send to my conservative cousins in Missouri, and they could sign it. It was just like, love them or hate them, you could agree, censure and move on to the issues. We assume the government's really supposed to be doing something for us, and that the media is really supposed to be informing us about something. No one was saying anything quite that simple and sensible. And likewise in the run-up to the war with Iraq. It was just, there was a need for that to be put out there. With MomsRising, that next wave of the women's movement, we want to all be in it together. I don't actually think most people hate mothers. And if we start doing a little consciousness raising here, maybe it won't work out so it looks like everybody hates mothers, right? That would be better. Living room conversations, talk about a vacuum. It's like, how can we be where we are today? I don't know. I find it stunning. But leveraging disruptive technologies whenever we see them, that is an opportunity point. Listen and serve, strong vision, big ears. When you are trying to mobilize people, telling them what to do is far less effective than hearing what they want to do and helping to find a way for them to do it. Tap into media and cultural hotspots. It is that timing thing. You're trying to catch a wave. And so, just think the surfboard imagery or body surfing, whatever it is. It's really hard to get good at catching waves. And it's much harder than catching waves doing this stuff. But you got to keep trying it because that's the way we go places. So most of the time it's about persistence. And you keep on trying to find that Goldilocks moment. And finally, I end on trust the citizens because that's the place where I have found the most optimism. When you get down to just regular people talking to each other, giving them the capacity to do what it takes, they're actually incredibly effective. So this is a picture some of you may recognize as tearing down the Berlin Wall. And the question I have is, what you gonna do? It's like, what are you dreaming of doing? How are you going to make the changes you think need to happen? I hope this was helpful. And we'll end with the rainbow. So, thank you. And
Hi, I'm Dan Farber, the current chair of ERG and a member of the law school faculty. I hope that you're able to take a few minutes to answer questions. But before we get to that, I have some acknowledgments. So you can think of this as sort of the public service break in the proceedings. Of course, I would like to thank Joan for her splendid remarks. But I'd also like to say that tonight's lecture was funded in part by the class of 1935, who are sadly no longer with us, and by the Philip Roth family, who are very much with us, and some of whom are, in fact, literally with us tonight. We're grateful both to the late members of the class of 35 and to the Roth family for their generosity. I also wanted to make sure to thank our staff, Toby Doucette, Sandra Duvali, and Kay Burns for their help in making the arrangements tonight. They seem to have executed the plans with their usual efficiency. So now we can go back to our regularly scheduled program. And let me just turn it back to you for, I think we have about 20 minutes if there are questions from the audience. Great.
okay.
I'll signal when we're out of time.
All right, sounds
Okay.
good.
My name's Craig. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
My name's Craig. Everything you said makes incredible sense. It's all extremely logical. And you touched a little bit on the big elephant in the corner there towards the end, which I'm reminded a little bit about a bit of the bubble we live in the Bay Area and the bubble that the Bay Area is in, which is California. And I was back visiting family and friends in Minnesota a few weeks ago, and just trying to have a civil conversation around the dinner table with some friends was difficult. And part of that, I think, is something, again, you touched on at the end there, is the mass media and the 24-hour news cycle. So very few people are talking about that, with the exception of people who are, you could say, semi-serious, like Jon Stewart, who touches on this sort of thing a lot, about just moderation, and where is the moderation? And that doesn't really have a place in the mass media and filling up 24 hours of news. And you can't survive if you have a moderate message. So everything that we're talking about just gets polarized extremely for the media that most people are watching and getting their influence from, and hence we end up with these polarized conversations in our living rooms. So I'm just wondering, you know, can you start a new .org so that we can get moderate media that can pay for itself and get that kind of conversation
I have
going?
too much to say about this. I mean, note that you had Jon Stewart as your best news source. That's a comedy show, but that's disturbing. Over a decade ago, the media moved to entertain. It became entertainment. News became entertainment rather than about actually informing people. And I honestly think that the living room conversations are our best opportunity to move the media. Because when people start talking to each other, they do find these commonalities. So the dream on this is that if we can do hundreds of conversations this year, then we can have tens of thousands of conversations next year to talk about whatever people find most important. And that's one. You know, one of the things I would like to see is that hateful rhetoric in the media would become as, you know, unacceptable as porn. You know, it's still going to happen like porn does, but people won't listen to it in public, and they'll be a little ashamed, I hope. They should. But right now, that's kind of okay. There are folks that have tried to start things to, revive the media and pay for it. And so far, I haven't seen that happen because it's a deep, long-term ask.
Yeah, I've spent the last 50-some years studying alternative dispute resolution and things that came out of it, like mediation. And I disagree with everything you said about Americans don't know how to have civil conversations like the British. The British have disagreements, but there's content. When Americans have disagreement, it's just about anger. When they have agreement, it's just about being nice. So if you're going to have anything happening in this country that's, in quotes, democratic, you can't ask people to withhold judgment. I teach my students to have judgments with evidence, not just to have opinions, but with evidence. And I'm shocked that many of them think it's a bad thing to have judgment and it's a bad thing to have opinion. So I think that what you're doing, I think, is a true believer approach to what to do about problems in our society. But there's 50 years of recorded disagreement and documentation on what we call coercive harmony, alternative dispute resolution.
Well, I'm not, it's interesting what you're saying, because the part about the conversations are about content, and they're about, the facts and sitting down and talking to them and actually listening to each other. And the first conversation is mostly about listening and hearing other people's point of view. And I don't know what the second conversation is going to be about yet. But I did find that the people I sat down with were really smart and that we were respectful with each other. And we developed some relationship. And we did have content. The other folks I know had content as well. I'm sure, when you do something and allow people to have many conversations, I'm sure there will be some somewhere that don't. But I think overall, encouraging people to try to have a serious conversation, which is what living room conversations are, is a good thing.
Hi. I'm just I've heard pretty valid criticisms, I think, that none of the protest or social movements in the United States have been powerful enough to dislodge any of the real power structures at hand, and also that most of our forms of demonstration today are useless. So I just kind of want to know what you think, and maybe some other avenues that could be useful.
Well, I'm clearly not feeling like we have succeeded in what we need to do. The avenues we need to take are getting the money out of politics. That corporate power is out of control. I think that's a place where you can find citizens on both sides really quite concerned about corporate power. Corporate power and government power, they're, intermingled like that. So I don't have the answer. I hope that answers will emerge. And the living room conversations is one seed for that. I don't know if it will do it, but I'll do everything I can to help it get there.
Hi, my name is Bill from Michigan. I'm here visiting for the week, and I'm just thrilled at being able to listen to your series here and your lectures at Berkeley. I've been spending time with my cousins and having this discourse over the last week about almost the same thing. And one of your last comments just really resonated with me about non-shared realities, because for anybody who has spent time working within a business or corporation, one of the things they've been struggling with mightily over the last decade is doing away with what they call stovepipes. Stovepipes are where people get locked into one and only one corridor of action, if you will. And when we don't share realities, we're locked into our own chosen prison, or stovepipe, if you will. of thinking the same way. We don't see the other things, as you mentioned, that are outside of it. And I guess to the ladies' comments down in the 8th row or so there that I thought also were very germane, that how do we break down the stovepipes in our society so that we can have discussions back and forth, but we all know what we're talking about in terms of something has happened. We don't even know what's happened most of the time.
You know, I'm thinking a little more about the effectiveness question. And one of the things that has been effective was actually the 99% movement when the focus was on budget for a long, long time. It changed the conversation to, you know, the discrepancy in, you know, wealth in the country, to the fact that we need to be getting more jobs and other. So there are numerous partial successes along the way. I wish I could say I'd seen bigger successes.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and I just want to congratulate you on everything you've done. It's just amazing. And I'm with an organization, EcoCity Builders. I just had a few comments and questions. One question was, I was wondering how you were able to grow your network. Like, how do you link your network to other networks? I'm just curious about, you know, piecing together or weaving networks together. Another question I had was, you know, could we have these virtual conversation, the living room conversations, could they be virtual maybe, like Skype living room conversations where we might not have to go over to someone's living room, but we could all gather, you know, in a chat or something and have these conversations online? So I've been using Skype a lot, and I can talk with anyone in the world, you know. It's kind of interesting. It would be fun to have these dialogues, you know, with people around the country, and not just in my neighborhood, but around the world. And then the final comment is that it seems within our work lately with the United Nations that climate change has become really polarized and politicized, but cities and communities are not. So when you start talking about issues of like clean air, clean water, healthy food, you know, education, everybody wants that. So when we talk about, you know, citizenship and what we care about as human beings, to me, I think, and I think that's what you were saying when you're talking about community dialogue, that everybody wants that. So how can we start to work towards creating a healthier, you know, nature and culture? So anyway, those are a few comments. Thanks.
Okay, let's see what's going to be most helpful to get back on. That was 3. Well, living room conversations was in the middle, and it had a more specific answer to it. What was the question again?
Well, could you have like a
Skype, virtual.
Yeah.
That's actually, I would not recommend them for families because you have too much history. You're counting on the social norms we have to keep things on track. And I don't know if they would work because the body language, breaking bread together, is a really, you know, I think it's the sort of thing I might try after I'd had a conversation and had some relationship. But with people that you're really anxious about meeting, and we're all anxious to meet people that have very different views from us, and we do think they're a little crazy when we first sit down. You know, that's, so my instinct is at first you want to be in person, then you might try something else. On the other hand, this is open source. So, you know, anyone can take everything that's there and try it, and, you know, hopefully the information will flow back and we'll be sharing what's working, what's not working. You know, are we getting good information in? Because you can't have a good discussion without good information in. And we are working to figure out, okay, how do you create, are there areas where you can create, you know, a fact sheet that everyone can share so that you can have an intelligent conversation about things?
Yeah, you mentioned the importance of a shared reality. And you also mentioned early in the middle that facts are not enough, that you also need other things, and I certainly accept that. But some of the most intensive conversations I've had with people of very different opinions in the last years has been when not only I discovered that they had different opinions, but they also had different facts. And I really had difficulty getting beyond that and figuring out how to work when they didn't accept the same reality that I believe is fundamentally true. And I sort of became to think that in many respects, our culture and many individuals have become sort of what I call mentally obese, let their brains go because they can, in the same way that many people have sort of maybe let their bodies go because you can, survive and, be non-fact based, and it works.
Well,
and whereas maybe a few hundred years ago, maybe it wouldn't have worked.
Think of this in a different evolutionary context. You can convince somebody on some level about climate change that's in the other tribe. But if they actually take that convinced position within their tribe, they will be kicked out of it, which will end their survival. So just on that kind of evolutionary level, as long as we're as, taken apart as we are, it's very dangerous to hold a view of the other. So from a game theory or, evolutionary survival, it's just really, once something's become polarized, then you have to toe the party line. You got to take it on faith. And so we need to do some really deep work to get past that. At least it appears that way. Or humor. Humor helps too.
I wanted to follow up on the conversation about telecommuting. I didn't disagree with any of the benefits that you said it had, but if I was thinking about what kind of a country or society of any scale I wanted to live in, and it included things like having people of very different views coming together and working together, having some security, learning from each other, a lot of things that I think would be maybe in a bigger, higher priority, that telecommuting works against that. And I wonder about that.
Remember, I said halftime telecommuting.
Well, those are the numbers, but I'm just thinking of, and I think flexibility would probably be in there. But I'm just wondering about the thought of how to think about something that has a lot of very good attributes and how we'd fold it into a bigger fabric, a bigger system of the other things that we care about. That's all.
Well, there's also folks having things like the hub, where people come together to work that it's just local. They can get there locally and work with people all around wherever they're at. So it's, the options are many. And there's some people that really telecommuting's great for, and there's others it's not. That's why it's the custom fit workplace. Some people are bad at a desk in an office. Some people are great there. Keep the great ones there. Let the others do what fits better.
So, Joan, I'm really glad you used the word tribe, because I think tribal really describes the way things are behaving in Washington. It's not about facts, it's not about reason, it is about what tribe you belong to. So that sort of brings up a concept that I wonder about. Once when I was visiting Tanzania, we were with some teachers and we asked them, what do all Tanzanians hold in common? And they said a very interesting thing, that we're all Tanzanians. And I think when you go to different countries, there are certain things that people all hold in common. And in our country, I think it's freedom, which is absolutely the single word that almost every American will tell you that they hold in common. But it's definitely a two-edged sword. Can this be one of a seed of conversation? And are there other seeds of conversation to try to bridge out of the tribal culture we've gotten into?
I think it absolutely can, and I think we have a lot of, that's the first three questions in the first living room conversation is all about who you are, what your dreams for the future are, and the things that make you go, oh yeah, this is a good person. Because we all have good, visions for the future of our families and our communities. And we have vastly more in common than that which separates us. It's just the media and the politicians keep on focusing on that other stuff that separates us. It's insane how much we focus on the divisive pieces. And in fact, Yeah, I am a mediator, but trying, if we could do collaborative problem solving, we'd be so much further along in being able to, meet the demands we have. Yet we've got, if you look at it in terms of game theory in the political realm right now, people are getting rewarded for being completely rigid. So I've been sitting here going, okay, how do we change that game theory? I'm a grassroots organizer, so I've come up with grassroots organizer answers. I'm sure there are other good answers out there, but that's kind of where my passion is.
First of all, I'm struck by the inherent optimism of your talk. I mean, most of us are veterans of some kind or another in rather divisive, rather bitter and sometimes personal struggles over climate change, conservation, environmental policy. And as you were talking, I was thinking, well, the optimism is great, the living room conversations are great, but that little thing you said about Google and how each of us are getting different kinds of news seems to me something that is not likely to be overcome by the tens, hundreds, even thousands of successful living room conversations. We're hardwiring ourselves to think differently. And the question, a couple of weeks ago, Tom Friedman visited New Zealand and Australia and wrote an interesting column about how those two countries are dealing with climate change. And the difference, according to one of the politicians that he interviewed, was compulsory voting. People have to vote. So they still have the extremes, they have the divisive debates, but when people vote, the middle emerges. And I'm wondering whether you would support some kind of initiative that made voting compulsory in this country.
I remember that freedom thing. Compulsory is a really bad word with some people around here. My favorite initiative is actually to have high schools be judged not only on their graduation rates, but on if their graduates vote. Because we should have, if we spent all this money educating kids to be educated citizens, the proof should be that they register to vote and they start voting. And we have very poor voting rates at the youngest end. That's my favorite on that front. But you're right, I am kind of crazy to continue to be optimistic. It's just one of the ways I keep doing this stuff. And I was wondering whether I should say, and I'm really not willing to wait for it to bend so much longer. I'm getting really impatient. But there's a saying that you have to go slow to go fast. And so in terms of the living room conversations, it's a potential tipping point. Now, I say tens of thousands next year, it could be hundreds of thousands. But that depends on if we're ready. Have we hit that Goldilocks moment? I've just experienced so much unhappiness with the way things are. Maybe we have. If we haven't, someone else got to come up with another good idea, and I'll get on board.
Well, this has been very exciting and stimulating. I hadn't heard the high school idea before, for example, and I think that's pretty cool. I hope you'll all join me in thanking Joan for her remarks tonight, and let's all hope that the arc does bend. Thank you.